Brand new out today, we've learned that New York City is pulling some funding for the migrant population. Let's go to this news clip.
News: the mayor just announced that the city will no longer issue vouchers to migrants to pay for food, ending a controversial program that had repeatedly come under attack by conservatives and others.
This pilot program in New York City, drenched in both humanity and controversy, distributed debit cards to migrant families staying in city-funded hotels and allowing them to buy their own food. Eyewitness News reporter Josh Einiger following the breaking news for us. Josh?
Well, Bill, it's a program that, as you say, generated plenty of controversy, but now its absence may raise even more questions. The so-called Immediate Response Cards pilot program was designed to help feed migrant families who'd found themselves in New York with no way to afford food. The one-year contract provided what the city described as culturally relevant food to 2,600 migrant families, allowing them to basically buy what they wanted. A family of four with two kids under 5 got about $350 per week to cover food in a program the city said would actually save taxpayers millions a year. It also reduced food waste. You may remember the food the city had been providing in migrant shelters was seen as not culturally sensitive to the needs of some migrant groups, and it ended up just going to waste. For more than a year, the city was groaning under the weight of more than 200,000 asylum seekers. Officials say the migrant population has actually reduced lately. In fact, a massive shelter on Roosevelt Island is in the process of closing. In the meantime, Mayor Adams spoke on the phone yesterday with President-elect Donald Trump, who had vowed during his campaign to mass deport migrants. Aside from congratulating him on his win, though, Adams today would not say what they discussed.
Okay, so that's going to kind of complicate things a little bit for Letitia. In other words, New York City itself seems to be buying into something kind of different. Everybody seems to be buying into something kind of different. I mean, there's some outliers out there, and we'll get to AOC and her reaction, but here's the reality of it. Again, take a look at that red map, take a look at the blue map, and this is despite all the media coverage, which told you over and over and over again how great Kamala Harris was, how bad Donald Trump was, and America basically said, yeah, I'm not buying it, I'm not buying it. This may have had something to do with it, right? A little bit of inflation going on. We have some breaking news I want to get to right now. A lot of questions about who's going to be in the administration. My source is telling me right now that Scott Bessent, he is the head of Key Square Group, the founder of Key Square Group, a hedge fund. He is rumored to be Trump's top pick for Treasury Secretary, so that's kind of a big deal. He's someone who is well thought of, I can tell you, within the investment community. And for some people, he may be seen as ever so slightly controversial because he has said, actually as recently as at some point last year, that there may be a need for a sort of shadow Fed position. In other words, so long as Jerome Powell is going to be retiring in May of 26, you may want to have somebody on the back end sort of overseeing things, so when that transition happens, it would be somewhat seamless. It also effectively would make Jerome Powell a little bit less powerful, and you know how much President Trump is not crazy about Jerome Powell. He's made that clear over and over again. So that's pretty interesting. Scott Bessent is definitely up there. John Paulson is also somebody who's being considered, as I understand it right now. But the interesting thing with Scott is he is a big believer in this sort of MAGA revolution from an economic perspective. In fact, as far back as February, which would have been like 9 months ago, February of this past year, he said that the markets were betting on this Trump economy. And if you looked at the internals in the markets, it was very, very clear. He said this actually in a letter to his investors. I'm going to quote, because this was kind of a controversial opinion. I mean, back in February, right? Very, very controversial. He wrote, "Markets are now anchoring on the potential market-friendly policies of a Trump victory on November 5th. So he was way ahead of the curve. This is him writing in February to the investors of Key Square Capital Management's macro fund. And that was at a time when, you know, most of the billionaires out there were backing Nikki Haley. So he did write that anticipating a Trump victory would mean an extended market-friendly economic, tax, and regulatory environment. So that seems to be partly what's playing out right now. I mean, look at the massive upside we've seen in the market just since this news came. Look at what we were seeing in Polymarket. The expectation was for a Trump win, and what did you see but the market rallying as we went into Tuesday? So that's pretty massive.